Yes, I'd be interested in how much in your work within your current new book and other works and what you teach on the link with ecology and what is happening to the environment, which is beyond crisis. And because I see, and many others do, they're inseparable. And you know, I've had people challenge me that environmental issues are a peace and justice issue, but they are fundamentally. And in a lot of ways, I see this almost as the root sin, if you will. But I'll be interested in how in your work you respond to that.
That's an important question. I mean, in some sense, you know, the environmental issue may kill us all before we've resolved some of these other issues. So it's something we have to take very seriously. In my own career, you know, I grew up in Germany, where environmentalism was an issue as long as I can think, you know, and so that was a very strong concern. But for a while, I kind of ignored it because it seemed to me so irredeemably middle class, you know, in the sense of people that were basically worrying about, you know, what is it that I'm eating on my table, or what is the air that I'm breathing. It was so self-centered that it didn't seem to be connected to justice issues. That's a mistake to think that way. I mean, it is connected, like you're saying, to justice issues. I realized that later again. But I think in order to get at the economic issue, you need to, at the ecological issue, you need to move through the economic one, because that's where you see a lot of the problems. For instance, you know, there is talk these days about environmental racism, which is another way of saying we could put our dumps in the neighborhoods of minority communities. We don't care about the environment somewhere else. You know, we export poisonous waste and that sort of thing, which is really an economic problem. And even if you think global warming, you know, those of us who have some funds and who can just turn up the air conditioning will be much better off than other people who can't. And so the reason why I think a lot of people are not taking the environment as seriously as they ought to is because we can also displace the problems in the low-income communities. Still now, I mean, this will come back to haunt us. My point here is, even when you think about ecology, I think you can learn some really basic lessons from the bottom up by looking at those who are most affected by these problems. And only when you see it, I think, will you really see the urgency of it. So that's the way I would argue that it is really connected. Yes?
In terms of speaking truth to power, you're going to have the icon of political power with the Bush Library on your campus, and you have a faculty and administration, at least administration for sure, who supported this development. Is there any movement now in terms of, once it's a done deal, so to speak truth to power on your campus in the state?
I mean, this is back to the question, you know, is there some movement among the faculty or among the students, you know, in the university? When it came to the problem, just very quickly about the Bush Library, the real problem was never simply the library, but the fact that there was the Bush Institute, which was proposed as a partisan institute, with a mission statement to further the political ideas of George W. Bush. Now, there's no institute like that in the world connected to a university. This is different from the Hoover Institution at Stanford. This is different from anything. This is a precedent where you have a situation where a partisan think tank gets sanctified by the university. That was the basic issue. A lot of people weren't aware of that.
And the other way around.
And the other way around.
That's the halo effect of that power. And
Sure, yes. Now, what I can say to you about that is that about a third of the SMU faculty signed petitions against that sort of a deal, arguing that if there should be a partisan think tank, then it could not be connected to the university. Or if you were connected to the university, you shouldn't be a part of the think tank. Something like that was signed by about a third of the faculty, which is significant. I mean, this is a good number of professors actually speaking out. That didn't make a difference. So what is the alternative? This thing is coming, this thing is happening. Well, at the same time as we speak, some of you involved here are also involved in the foundation of PCCS, the Progressive Christian Center in the South, which already has a website. You can look it up at pccsouth.org. Right now, this is very much in its early stages, so we'll see what happens.
Is that PCC or
PC, sorry.
PCSS?
No, I misspelled this. PCC South. There we go. PCC South.org. What we can say is when the Bush Institute gets started around 2013, we have been here already. We were first. We're not a reaction. We're not just thinking about how can we react to something that gets imposed on us, but we're actually starting to build some of our own alternatives from the bottom up. This is not a university institute. This is the sort of effort that hopefully pulls together grassroots Christians, people who struggle for justice issues, people who struggle for a more radical way of understanding and living the faith. And the good thing about it is that, of course, we're nowhere size-wise comparable to the Bush Institute, but we can say there's an alternative. I tell you, this is something that has made a difference in Germany. You know, when you think back to the Bonhoeffers, everybody now knows Bonhoeffer. If you look in terms of size, Bonhoeffer at one point ran, a seminary of the Confessing Church in the north of Germany. These were very small organizations compared to big Nazi fascist Germany. But I'm hoping that some of the things that we're doing, some of the things that DACPA is doing, will actually make a difference in the face of that. There was an activist pastor who understood a lot of the things I talked about 60, 70 years ago by the name of Claude Williams. He never got too much exposure, so you probably never heard of him. But Williams at one point said, the fact that there were groups around Jesus, the fact that there were multitudes, as the Gospels call it, points to the organizing work that they do. This never happened just because somebody preached so well or spoke so well or that they thought he had so much attraction as a person. Whenever you have these countercultural communities, it takes organizing. And I think this is what we have to remember. It can't be done simply by people giving presentations or writing books or doing that sort of stuff, but actually by organizing from the bottom up. And so Williams' point, I don't know PCCS can pull it off or not, we'll have to see. But the point here is, or DACPA, we have to organize. This is not something that will happen naturally, but we have to build this with our own hands, as it were. Where we'd have to look again. And that's where we have to look and ask the question, is this in the long term even benefiting us anymore? Even though we may have a certain ownership, we may have a certain participation there, but even there, I think looking at the magnitude would be helpful to see who ultimately benefits from it. And keep in mind, the basic law on the book in this country for corporations is that the corporation is not required to work for the benefit of the worker or the CEO, but for the benefit of the stockholders. There's a Supreme Court decision on that that's basically seen as the precedent. And so, even a CEO doesn't have the option to say, well, I'd like to have my workers treated better, or I'd like to do something for my labor. But the basic rule is to follow the interests of the stockholders. And that's where we have to do, I think, a little bit more thinking